Hi everyone, welcome back to our series. And this week we're going to be focusing on globalization and development. Now, we briefly talked about it last week when we used Haiti as a case study for the extent to which civil society is instrumental or undermines development in a nation, right? And we looked at it in terms of the neoliberal process of giving aid, where it is aid has neoliberal conditions attached to it, where it is some countries may have to open up their economies to, in order to access the aid that is necessary for whatever purpose that they want to use it for. And in the case of Haiti, we saw that economic liberalization that was attached to aid basically destroyed the agricultural industry. So today we're going to be looking at that in more detail, but not necessarily with the focus on Haiti. So yeah, today I had a debate with my colleague Miss Howe Dopwell on the advantages. I had to argue the advantages of globalization. And I felt like j'ai trahi ma cause. I felt like I betrayed my cause. Because, no, it's not that I'm against globalization. I mean, I have benefited. We have all benefited from globalization, right? And those of us who advocate for globalization, you do realize that with free trade, you are promoting competitiveness. You have promoted competitivity. There's a variety of goods that and services that consumers are able to take advantage of. But when it comes to IPE, we're not looking at necessarily at the benefits to the consumer. We're looking at the political implications of having free trade. And it boils down to this: free trade ain't fair trade. So, Dylan, you want to explain what I mean by this, where it is I say free trade isn't fair trade?
So I will explain very quickly. I'm like on the way back from KFC, but I wanted to talk about free trade. In terms of free trade, there's stuff like the BAFTA Free Trade Agreement, there's stuff like the Bahrain Free Trade Agreement. I need to look both ways, but it just encourages free trade between countries without limits and barriers. When you have those limits and barriers, it is what is referred to as protectionism, and this restriction of having equal opportunity within trade. That's when and this restriction of not having equal opportunity for trading between countries is what comes in. And that's where the concept comes from, that not all trade, that's where the concept comes from, that not all trade is free trade. In protectionism, there's also incentives providers. I'll offer you less. Like I will decrease my price so that we can do trade. I will restrict this person. I'll say, okay, you can't buy from me so that this person can receive this. And that is the example.
Additionally, it has been found that globalization has increased global and domestic inequalities because of economic liberalization. You are saying that having protectionist measures will not allow a wider access to markets to sell goods and services too, and therefore less revenue comes into your country, and therefore persons who are selling these goods and services, they will not be able to benefit from this revenue, causing more social inequality, more poverty. However, it has been found that increased economic liberalization has pretty much the same effect. What neoliberals need to understand is that the economic policies that promote free trade, less developed countries, they are not able, even though we have access to bigger markets, we don't have the economies of scale of bigger markets. And what tends to happen is that once once it is those countries cannot meet the requirements, like phytosanitary measures, or they can't meet the amounts that those bigger markets require for export for goods and services, or they have not, or that rather the raw materials that, because the less developed countries focus more on the exports of raw materials to then sell to developing nations to manufacture, and they then buy it back at a higher price. What tends to happen is that, one, you have a depletion of your foreign exchange, which is a problem, right? You will end up in a balance of payments problem. More on this at a later date. Please see someone for finance. But not only that, it also means that you will also have an increase in poverty, because once you cannot meet those quota requirements for the bigger economies, those small scale enterprises, they get wiped out by cheaper goods that are produced by other developing nations that have bigger economies of scale. Case in point, China. China is a big developing nation, and they are able to mass produce a lot of things that smaller countries can produce, but on a larger scale. And that promotes inequalities, and also causes more poverty, because bigger countries tend to go to places to get cheaper goods, and the smaller countries, their industries end up dying off. Also, let's look at deregulation real quick. Deregulation, when it comes to globalization and the political economy, you tend to end up having an abuse of certain laws and human rights, as well as the environment. Because you want to make your country more attractive to do business in and make it easier to do business, you relax the regulations and controls that would ordinarily restrain other business practices. However, let's look at Shein. Shein abuses labor laws, international labor laws, all for the sake of mass production of fast fashion. See videos on this on YouTube. I'll attach the link below. But you see what I mean? But when I say that free trade isn't necessarily fair trade, because in some instances, what globalization has done is simply reproduce global inequalities and structural exploitation.